Hello, and welcome to this recorded presentation regarding assessment evidence checks and best practice within portfolios. My name is Dominic Green and I'm the Technical Advisor for Business here at City & Guilds. This session will start with looking at what a portfolio is, how to map and set out a portfolio before looking at some of the previous lessons learned. I'm then going to outline a new portfolio process which should reduce the number of issues some of our customers may face. Finally, I shall ensure you know how you can locate support with portfolios and endpoint assessment. Let's first look at what a portfolio is. So what is a portfolio? For the purpose of this guidance, the term portfolio is used as a generic term and covers any means by which on-program evidence is collected by an apprentice. Examples of this are journey logs, showcase portfolios, and summative portfolios. A portfolio is a concise collection of the apprentice's best pieces of evidence selected from the breadth of available evidence. Portfolios often follow the less is more approach, as the evidence should be based around quality and not quantity. As the portfolio is very personal to the learner, the pieces of evidence submitted will most likely be different from one learner to the next. Evidence which is one learner's best is not necessarily going to be another learner's best. It is therefore very unlikely that two portfolios will look alike. A portfolio will effectively demonstrate the apprentice's performance in relation to the specified criteria and demonstrate their highest quality work. It is important to note at this stage that if there are gaps in the learner's portfolio, which have been identified by internal quality assurance checks, then the portfolio must be returned to the learner to add further evidence. It is also important that with every portfolio submitted, an evidence referencing form or index must be completed. These are normally supplied by City & Guilds and can often be found on the websites associated to the standard under the Documents tab. Each piece of evidence must be linked to the criteria it maps against and is trying to be achieved. It must be clear to the independent endpoint assessor what type of evidence they are looking to assess. For example, if this is a witness testimony, you might document this by using the term WT and denote which one, if more than one has been submitted. For example, WT2. It is important that when a portfolio is internally quality assured prior to submission, that the evidence is checked as well as the recording form. It is important to note that if large pieces of evidence are being submitted, these should be clearly referenced. Often, a large document will map across to many of the criteria within the assessment plan. We have seen many apprentices completing the Business Administrator Level 3 standard reference their work within the margins of large documents. This identifies to the independent endpoint assessor immediately where the evidence is located and, although not mandatory, is often seen as good practice. When internal quality assurance takes place within your centre, this should identify if the referencing is clear as well as the quality of evidence submitted. Each standard may have a different requirement of how to set out a portfolio. Often, there is not a one-rule-fits-all scenario. Some standards will state their recommendations within the assessment plan or within City & Guilds guidance support documents. Three examples of this is the Customer Service Practitioner Level 2, the Customer Service Specialist Level 3, and finally the Business Administrator Level 3 standards. Customer Service Practitioner Level 2 gives apprentices two choices on how to build a portfolio. The first choice being as a written report, typically between 3,000 to 4,500 words, and the second choice being as a recorded audio presentation with appendix. Customer Service Specialist Level 3 says a portfolio must have a minimum of 10 pieces of evidence and a maximum of 15 pieces. The Business Administrator Level 3 says a report between 8 to 12 pages as a minimum and a recommendation of 25 pages as a maximum. Please check individual assessment plans for guidance. Now let's look at lessons learned and frequently asked questions around portfolios. Good practice within a portfolio is to set the scene in an opening paragraph. This places the apprentice's job role into context for the independent endpoint assessor. Who are you? set the context for the evidence that follows in the portfolio. It's also good practice to look at the S.T.A.R.R method. S.T.A.R.R being situation, what's the piece of work asked for? T being task, what's the piece of work asked for? Action being showing how you do it. The result, what was the outcome? Was it good and bad, and why? And reflection, would you do the same again or different, and why? Of course, portfolios must conform to VACs also. VACs being valid, authentic, current, sufficient, and consistent. We do not need everything that the learner has done or achieved. We need the best for any given outcome, or only piece they have for an outcome. Evidence within a portfolio must show the learner's evidence and what they have done. Place the evidence into context and ensure it maps to the assessment criteria. Using the S.T.A.R.R method can easily guide the learner in how to set out evidence appropriately. This example of the S.T.A.R.R method has been taken from an apprentice working within the digital industry. It clearly identifies what the situation is, how they have planned relevant tasks throughout the months and the timelines. The actions of the learner are also shown and identifies what they have done and has been backed up with screenshot evidence. The results have been identified within a report, which in turn has been sent to their manager. Lastly, feedback has been received and the learner has reflected on their tasks. Although this is only a snapshot and a very brief one, it does give a good outline on how to follow the S.T.A.R.R method. We're now going to look at some of the frequently asked questions we receive at City & Guilds regarding portfolios. The first question: are the on-programme qualification certificates enough for the outcomes to be met in the portfolio? Unfortunately, the answer is no. The certificates only prove the apprentice can pass a test on any given day. We actually need to see how they link what they have learned to what they do in their job role. Question 2. Can apprentices use a report format they are familiar with? Yes, but please be aware that many standards give recommendations as to how to lay out the portfolio. An example of this is the 3 examples I gave previously around customer service practitioner, customer service specialist, and business administrator, all of which have different recommendations. Question 3. Should I include everything the apprentice has done in the portfolio submitted for endpoint assessment? We want to see a concise collection of the apprentice's best pieces, which is selected from the breadth of available evidence. This should effectively demonstrate the apprentice's performance in relation to the specified criteria and be of their highest quality work. We therefore do not want to see every piece of evidence. Question 4. Should I include some early work and then their improved work for the portfolio? We want to see what they have become and not the journey, unless it is to show why they have made a specific decision, carry out a task, or act in a particular way. Question 5. Does the portfolio have to be submitted in a word process document? Again, each standard is different, but alternatives are often available. Remember the example we used with the customer service practitioner? That allows either a written report or an audio-based presentation. We often have a misunderstanding between the term consistent and consistently when referring to portfolios. Consistent is often used to denote that it is expected that the apprentice will have a single style of submitting work. For instance, when creating a report, they use a consistent layout across all of those submitted. If the assessment plan states consistently, then it is expected the learner will provide more than one piece of evidence to meet the criteria on this occasion. We often get asked the question, what can lead to a fail within a portfolio? If all the outcomes are not met within a portfolio, or the evidence provided is weak, this may lead to a fail. Where employer witness testimonies are used, please ensure they discuss the evidence associated to the apprentice and what they have done, not what the team or company has done. Remember that all grading decisions have to be made by the independent endpoint assessor and not by centres. please don't include any assessment decision within the portfolio. The internal quality assurance aspect of portfolios is extremely important. Do not make assessment decisions as previously mentioned, but do ensure that all criteria has been met. Ensure a gap analysis has been carried out prior to the portfolio being submitted. Ensure that all evidence has been signed and dated and appropriately authenticated where required, and that there is no unnecessary duplication present. Please remember that portfolios should be built on the less is more approach. Finally, the evidence should relate to the apprentice, saying I did this and not we did this. Now let's look how we are implementing a new support mechanism for our customers. City and Guilds have introduced a new process to support their customers. After a portfolio has been submitted to our endpoint assessment team, it will be checked by our EPA coordinators. An assessment decision will not be made at this stage. If there are gaps found within the evidence referencing form or index, the portfolio will now be returned to the centre along with an assessment evidence return form. If the same is found within the portfolio and gaps in the evidence have been identified, this too will result in the portfolio being returned to the centre. The portfolio must be accompanied with a referencing form. If this hasn't been completed, the portfolio will be returned. The evidence return form will highlight the reason why the portfolio has been returned and outline what action the centre must take to rectify this. If within your chosen standard the portfolio is graded, for example Customer Service Practitioner, this will not result in a fail at this stage. If, during an initial check carried out by the EPA team, find that multiple pieces of evidence are serving the same purpose, then the portfolio will be returned to the centre, again supported by the portfolio evidence return form. In addition, if there are pieces of evidence contained within the portfolio that are not identified within the evidence reference form or index, therefore excessive to requirements, the portfolio will once again be returned to the centre. Please remember that if a portfolio is returned, this does not mean it has failed, but simply allows time for the centre or apprentice to amend the portfolio in line with the portfolio evidence assessment form. The re-upload of a portfolio is not classed as a resit, as no assessment decision has been made at any stage. These supportive measures should allow centres the opportunity to upload only the best evidence within the portfolio and stand a better chance of being successful at the point it is first assessed by an independent endpoint assessor. We're now going to look at what support is available for building a portfolio. It is important to know that all standards have supporting guidance documents to help both centres and learners complete endpoint assessment successfully. Some standards also have exemplar materials which are found on our SmartStream platform. If these are available for your chosen standard, these can be accessed once a learner is registered with City and Guilds. An example of this can be seen here, showing what is available for the Level 2 Customer Service Practitioner upon registration of a learner. Each document shown on the slide guides the centre and learner on best practice in achieving the various assessment methods within the standard. Of course, once a learner has successfully achieved endpoint assessment, it would be extremely good practice to standardise against quality, distinction-graded portfolios. However, please bear in mind that many standards also use a question and answer or interview which is attached to the portfolio method of assessment, and so competency and understanding via questioning will also have support of the evidence within the portfolio. If you require further assistance around our EPA process, we have a team of dedicated endpoint assessment partnership managers on hand to help. Martin Newman covers the South, Rebecca Hollenby covers the Midlands, Janice Collins covers the North, and Charlie Freeman is the Endpoint Assessment Partnership Team Manager. Please feel free to get in touch with the appropriate partnership manager who will be more than happy to help. Our website offers lots of information, so please do take a look. If you wish to be kept up to date with any changes to qualifications, apprenticeships, or current news, we do recommend you register for email updates. This can be done very easily by signing up on our website. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all very much for listening.